Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 12th Annual Medical Scientific Conference on Morgellons. And I want to thank everyone that's made this conference possible. I know you all have traveled a long ways to be here today, and we're just really thankful that you made it, and we hope you get the most out of this, and then take all the information you glean about Morgellons home to your colleagues and friends and family, and educate others. I want to thank all the speakers, especially, as they come a long way, and without them, we could not hold this conference. And without all their expertise in treatment and in research, we wouldn't have gotten as far as we have with Morgellons. So thank you. I want to thank those exhibitors and sponsors that Betsy mentioned, and we're happy to have our new exhibitors here, so check out their products and services that they have. It's pretty interesting. And I thank all of our Charles E. Holman Morgellons Disease Foundation volunteers, actually all of them, we only have a few, for all your help in putting the conference together. And a special shout out to Nancy Yeager and to Denise Moudre for helping me keep my sanity, well, as much as possible. I just really appreciate the people that share my passion and for Morgellons disease research, because to me it's a huge deal, and it's just great to have, you know, volunteers and friends that share that. Most of you already know my story, and because I've been public about it for, well, pretty much since the beginning, but lots of new people here today, and I just want to tell you a little bit about, I'm going to put my story in a nutshell, if that's possible, because it's kind of a long story, but I'll just tell you a little bit about how the foundation came about, and then tell you just a little bit about what our foundation does. Okay, and this slide is shows how I made the transition from being a nurse to a patient. I began my nursing career fresh out of high school, and then it wasn't until I was in my early 40s that I began to develop Morgellons symptoms. And at the time, I'd been working in a medical specialty ICU for about 15 years at a large teaching hospital in San Francisco. I'd never dreamed that I would develop an illness which couldn't be diagnosed. And even farther from my imagination is to develop an illness that was not even acknowledged as being real by the medical community. My symptoms developed so slowly that they became increasingly debilitating. But even worse than all the symptoms of Morgellons, which included intensely itching skin, filaments protruding from our skin, and all of the symptoms of Lyme disease, like brain fog, headaches, weakness, and migratory joint and muscle pain. Even worse than all of those horrible life-changing symptoms, we've been ridiculed by the medical community, a community that I was once a part of. So I became desperate for medical care, and after several doctor visits, I realized they weren't going to help me. I was getting sicker and more disfigured every day, and the doctors that I saw, they didn't even believe I was physically ill. It took about 2 weeks for me to decide to be public about this, despite the stigma and despite the fact it could end my career, because I was becoming too sick to work anyway. So I went on the local news in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I told all about my illness. I described my symptoms, and I described my inability to get medical care. I couldn't even get a diagnosis, much less treatment. After my story aired, I began to hear from others all over the world, and they described the exact same symptoms and the exact same dismissal from the medical community. On the left, this is me in my job as a critical care nurse, and this is on the right is when I made the transition to a patient. These are my skin lesions. Pretty much everywhere on my body was broken out with lesions. And this is one of the first early doctor appointments where I actually saw a doctor who believed me. That's the reason I'm smiling in this doctor appointment, but that's Dr. Rhonda Casey at Oklahoma State University. However, she is a pediatrician, so she can't see adult patients anymore. So this was taken several years ago, but you can't make an appointment with Rhonda Casey now because she's strictly sees children. Let's see. And like many of you here, I'm sure you went from doctor to doctor like I did. And I was so surprised because I thought, well, surely they'll believe me. You know, I was an ICU nurse, so I was used to doctors listening to me, to what I had to say, and looking at any evidence, you know, on a patient that I had to show. So I was just blown away when they didn't want to look at my evidence. They didn't want to hear about the fibers. They just didn't want to believe this was real. I saw over a dozen doctors. Since my symptoms were odd, the dermatologists, they would automatically just conclude I was doing it to myself by picking at my skin. So I got several misdiagnoses, and I'm going to tell you quickly about some of those. Delusions of parasitosis. And I'm sure that many of you have had this same diagnosis. Yep. So that's a psychiatric disorder in which patients believe that they have bugs or insects crawling underneath their skin. And I hadn't even said the word bug or insect when I got that diagnosis. I knew it wasn't a parasite at the time. But another common one is monosymptomatic hypochondriasis. And I was lucky enough to get that fancy diagnosis as well. And that is, when a patient suddenly becomes a hypochondriac, but only about this one symptom. And in my case, it was my skin, but I think we've all known hypochondriacs in our time, and the ones I've known have multiple symptoms and multiple issues. So I'm not sure monosymptomatic hypochondriasis is a good diagnosis. It definitely wasn't what was happening to me. And I also had one doctor who thought self-mutilation. And that was pretty devastating because she thought I was doing this to myself and creating the skin lesions. And this is a picture here of self-mutilation. And as you can see, it doesn't look anything at all like Morgellons, really. So the only treatment I was offered was antipsychotics and antidepressants. Eventually, I did take the antidepressants, though, because I was so sick and I was becoming so depressed, you know, about the illness and about not finding a doctor who believed me. Some doctors often abbreviate monosymptomatic hypochondriasis as MHP. So that's what that is on the left. And so if you see that in your chart when you get your medical records, if you see what's written there, you know, you can know what these doctors are up to. No good. So, my wonderful husband, Charles E. Holman, stood by me through everything. And we were newlyweds with a little bit of a fairy tale type love story, and it survived all the trenches of Morgellons we found ourselves in. Charles was so supportive of me and sympathetic, and he went to all my doctor's appointments. He could see the filaments in my skin and filaments embedded in my skin, although the doctors I saw refused to look through the microscope to see that. We took the microscope, but they backed away and didn't want to look. We had to chuckle a little bit when I received my medical records. It was from UCSF Dermatology Department, and the doctor's note said, "Husband has a shared delusion." So we got a 2-for-1 diagnosis that day. So, and this is well known to dermatologists, and it's known as folie à deux, which is a French term that means the madness of two. And when the whole family believes in a patient, it's folie à famille. So, but the people I went to work and showed this to, my colleagues, and they were stumped by, you know, what was this in my skin? And we called that folie à ICU. Then eventually Charles and I learned about a clinician in Texas who had seen this before and was seeing this in her Lyme disease patients. It was just wonderful to find someone who was familiar with the condition and didn't even once think that I was delusional. So in July of 2004, we drove 1,500 miles to see Ginger Sabley, a nurse practitioner who was then practicing in Austin. And I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease and Morgellons, and I started on treatment. I became worse after starting treatment, and even at the end of the first year on treatment, I was still so sick, and I spent most of my time on the couch or in bed and wrapped up in a sheet at times because I couldn't even stand to put clothing on my skin. My skin was that sensitive. By 2005, I had become unable to work, and I had to take early disability retirement from the job that I had loved. By this time, Charles and I both knew we had to do something about this and help advocate for all these Morgellons patients and try to help make a change. So initially we joined forces with the Morgellons Research Foundation under the director of Mary Laytow, and Charles became the chairman of the board. And Dr. Greg Smith was also involved with the Morgellons Research Foundation. And then by 2006, we had started our own foundation, and it's now known as the Charles E. Holman Morgellons Disease Foundation. Charles designed our website, and he kept a diary of my illness, and that diary he wrote, people all over the world began to follow it. And that's still available to read on our website. I'm sure most of you have probably already seen that, but I still go back once in a while and read it because you can actually still feel love in all the words that he wrote. But then in 2007, 2 weeks after we returned from the first rally we had in the parking lot of the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, we'd returned. We'd been home for about 2 weeks, and I lost my husband, Charles, my rock. He had a sudden massive heart attack. But I've been able to pick up the ball and carry on, and so we're still making progress. But Charles used to say this. He used to say, I will get Morgellons disease recognized in my lifetime, or I will have died trying. And unfortunately, he did die trying, but I'm going to carry on the torch. My health and my skin had improved some by this time, but I was so emotionally devastated over losing Charles that I just stopped all treatment. I just didn't care anymore, and my skin became worse and worse. And then by 2012, here I was, nearly bedridden, covered in skin lesions, and once again, very desperate for help. Dr. Sabley was there for me, as she had been all along, and I went back on triple antibiotic therapy. And then in 3 years, my skin was finally cleared. Oh, I missed this slide. This is Dr. Ginger Sabley. And then this is my legs. This is at its worst here on the left side for you. And then 3 years after antibiotics, the same leg. My whole body was broken out like this. With lots of help and encouragement from Dr. Greg Smith, who was the co-founder of this foundation along with Charles, and with our volunteers and our board of directors, and Morgellons patients everywhere, I managed to pull myself up by my bootstraps, and I took over Charles' position as director, and our mission of research and recognition has gone on till this day, and I really feel like Charles would be very proud of all the progress that we have made at this point. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work of the foundation. Lots of people know about our foundation, but they're not sure exactly what we do. So I'm just going to cover some of the highlights quickly about what the foundation does. Probably most importantly is we fund scientific research. And we have funded a few different groups of research. And this is Dr. Eva Shoppy's student, Kate Flourish here on the right, and then Marianne Middleveen is the next person. And here's Jenny Burke from Australian Biologics. They contributed some of the early PCR that originally, identified the pathogens present in Morgellons skin. And this is Dr. Randy Wymore, and he has a Center for Investigation of Morgellons, and that's at Oklahoma State University, Center for Health Sciences. So we have provided grants there, and here's Eva Chape, and we have funded some of her research on Morgellons. And we've also been lucky enough to have some research gifted to us by iGeneX Labs. And I don't have a picture of her here, but we have Dr. Josna Shah, who has been the director of all of that. And they have actually donated a lot of work for Morgellons to try and identify the pathogens. So we're really grateful for the work she's done. Her paper was just published in November. So she's the most recent, publication that we have. And we're very grateful. Besides funding, I was going to say that there are no government grants or anything because Morgellons is not accepted as a disease. So funding, has to come from us, the patients, and our families, and all of our supporters. So, and we have to keep that moving. We hope that someday, we will get to a point where there will be some government money for this. But so far, we've come a pretty long way on a shoestring budget. So, so in addition to funding research, we also hold this annual conference. And this is our 12th annual. And this brings physicians, scientists, patients, supporters together, to discuss the latest each year. And it's a place for researchers to present their research findings as well. Now, in October of 2018, thanks to Dr. Karsten Nicholas, who will be presenting here at this conference, and all of his team at the BCA Clinic, we held our first annual European conference in Augsburg, Germany. So, and that brought attendees from 11 different European countries, and so it was really great to get the Morgellons message out to people in Europe, because this is a worldwide problem. It's in every country, and people are suffering. Doctors there do not believe them either. And not only do they not believe them, they don't care, to look at any of the evidence. So we're very thankful for Dr. Nicholas to help us get the message out to Europe. And we also got to tour his facility, which, I thought he had a doctor's office over there. Actually, it's more like a hospital. It's a 36,000 square feet facility with multidisciplinary treatment modes for patients, and it's got physical therapy, a cardiac place, just all different kinds of therapies for tick-borne illness. So it's really a neat facility. And Dr. Karsten, he believed me from the first day I met him. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see anything back there in the back. So, are we running late? Okay. So, yeah, and Dr. Karsten has come to this conference, and travels from Germany each year, and now we get to hold conferences in Augsburg. So let me get through these. This is just a save the date that we had for this conference. And continuing medical education, we set up information booths at different medical meetings and conferences, to try and educate doctors. And this is Nancy Egger and I with a booth at an ILADS conference. And we also advocate for patients. Patients contact us a lot, and we're hearing from a lot more patients all the time. Now it's an average of anywhere from 3 to 5 brand new patients per day that are reporting Morgellons disease. So we help them to find a doctor that will take them seriously and that will treat the underlying infections. and we just help to give them a voice and try and empower patients by educating them more about what Morgellons is and how it's treated. This is really important, as this is called Morgellons Global Data. This is a registry system that's on our website, and it's really the only way we now have of tracking how many new people are reporting symptoms of Morgellons. So if you haven't completed this 10-question survey and you have Morgellons, I hope that you will do that just as soon as you can. It only takes a few minutes. It's 10 questions. And, we need statistics. We need numbers in order to get researchers interested. So it's really important. So please share with any other Morgellons patients you know as well to complete Morgellons Global Data, because this has done a whole lot for the Lyme community. They do this for Lyme disease, and it's been very helpful. So we need everybody. Your personal information is never shared with anyone, so you don't have to worry about that at all. But we just really need the solid statistics. And public education. Of course, we do everything we can to educate the public. And recently, this film that we've been working on for the past 4 years, we hope that will change the public's viewpoint and maybe help to erase some of the stigma that's associated with Morgellons. And Ginger Savely has a book that she published a couple years ago, and we do have a few copies of this here for sale where you can purchase it while you're here. And when we run out, you can always get this off of Amazon. I highly recommend reading this book. And this is just more avenues that we have taken for public awareness. And in case you don't know, I wanted to let everyone know we do have a brochure that you can download and from our website and print it out and distribute that in your social circles and anywhere you'd like. And this is a rally that we did a couple years ago at the Texas State Capitol, and where I dumped a whole tub of pills down the steps of the state capitol to demonstrate the need for more research and better treatments, for Lyme disease and Morgellons disease. Our website's got a list of all of the research publications that you can access quickly, and we also put out press releases to try and keep people updated. We're also having our website, it's undergoing a major overhaul that it's needed for a long time, and so soon you're going to see a whole new face to the Charles E. Holman Foundation website. It'll still have all the great information, but it's just going to be a lot nicer and be a lot more friendly on your mobile device. So, because now people have a hard time accessing things. So, and Betsy already went over about the questions. I have that here on my list to tell you about. And if time permits, I was wondering if we could show the short film. Do you have that pulled up? Do we have a few minutes for time? We have like a 2-minute film that I was hoping to show, but it looks like I've gone a couple minutes over, so yeah, that's okay. Maybe we can show that at a different time today. We don't have it pulled up though, do we? Huh? No what? No, I've given it to you weeks ago. Weeks ago. Okay, we're just going to skip that because we're already a little bit off schedule, and maybe we can show it to you if we get caught up later on in the day. But I'm going to go ahead and announce the first speaker that we have today, and that is Ginger Savely, and she's a nurse practitioner with a doctorate in nursing. She has the most experience of anyone in the world in treating Morgellons disease, and she's treated thousands of patients over the past 16 years. She has peer-reviewed papers published in the literature, and she was actually the very first to associate Morgellons with Lyme disease. Dr. Savely I told you about the book that she's published, and it's been very popular among patients and healthcare providers. She practices in Washington, D.C., and joins us today to present the topic titled Morgellons, 16 Years on the Front Lines. Let's please give a big welcome to Dr. Ginger Saber.